There you go.
Okay.
All right. So, Ursula, thanks so much for joining me today to the Michelle Got Goals podcast. And today, my guest is Ursula Adams, founder of the SheHive. And there's a lot going on. Not a lot, but it's an awesome space. And that's why I wanted to have you on today. A lot of great women coming together. You really built a community with the SheHive. And that's what I always found very aspiring when I saw what you were doing in Ferndale.
Hmm.
So I'll let you introduce yourself, your background,
Yep.
what the SheHive is, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. So my name is Ursula Adams. As Michelle said, I'm an entrepreneur, so I own a few businesses. One, which Michelle and I actually got introduced to each other through, which is the SheHive. There's the sign right there. Which my head covers it. I have to figure out a better way to display that now. So it is a women's empowerment center is the easiest way to say it. So we provide coaching classes and community events for women. It used to be a physical space here in Ferndale, Michigan, up until the COVID, right? And so we actually had to go virtual, and then we kept a small co-working space going for most of COVID, but just in November completely shut down the physical space, and we are completely 100% virtual now. I don't foresee that being a forever thing, but it is a for now thing. And it's been kind of cool because it actually brings women from all over the world now into our events, So, our book club is made of people from California and New York and Portugal, so it's really neat to be able to do it that way. Although I do miss that energy of being in a space together. It was really cool. We had a
I
beautiful
can
space.
imagine.
So yeah, that's what I do. I run the SheHive, and most of that, what I do for my part in there is coaching. I specifically focus within the SheHive on coaching entrepreneurs, although there is a ton of different types of coaching and mentoring that's going on within the SheHive. My specialty is working with female entrepreneurs and women who want to define their ideal life outside of just career. And so that's what I work on there. I am also a organizational development consultant. I work in IT for one of the big automotives here in Detroit, as almost everybody in Detroit works for one of the big automotives, right? So I work in the office of the CIO, working on employee engagement initiatives and organizational change. I also just recently launched a new venture with a group of friends, two friends, called the Yes and Coaching Institute, where we are working to become a certified partner of the International Coaching Federation to train people on how to become ICF certified coaches. And so we're in the pilot phase of that right now and working on our accreditation this year in 2022. And just launched our first pilot cohort about a month ago and have 6 months of that. And hopefully we'll be big and booming by the fall. So just a few things going on. And then I do one-on-one coaching, corporate and private.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I was aware that you specifically coach or mentor entrepreneurs. I might have to hit you up afterwards. But so I see the theme, which your entrepreneurship is coaching and consulting
Mm-hmm.
and building community along the way, which is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do with Michelle Got Goals, because I find it very hard to connect with other entrepreneurs as
Mm-hmm.
you're building your business, especially
Yeah.
as you're building it still, being in the
Yeah.
nitty gritty of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear with your new endeavor, you said hopefully in 6 months, which I think is great because it's a great reminder. We have to be patient.
Oh, yeah.
Things take time.
Yeah. The way I look at everything that I've ever built, and I was very lucky that I had a mentor that really instilled this upon me, is that everything is an experiment. It's an iterative experiment. And so when I set my goals, I set general direction. So I am what is called a directional planner. I don't set very specifics with timelines. What I say is in 6 months, this is kind of where I roughly want to be, because I understand that I'm going to find something and learn something that is going to change the end goal most likely.
Mhm.
And so I set a general direction of where I want to go. But what I don't do is insist on releasing the whole hog all at once. And so like I said, it's an iterative process. For instance, when I was really starting the SheHive, in my head, I had not just in my head, I had a prototype on paper. I had a very firm idea in my head of what a full SheHive looked like. And it was a 3-story Victorian house.
Okay.
And I'm like, there was no way that I was going, and I had just quit my career of 20 years of nonprofit management. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to buy another house. I'm just trying to pay for the one that I have without a job, you know?
Right.
And so I almost didn't do it. But my mentor, I was sharing my business plan with him, or the beginnings of my business plan with him. And he goes, don't worry about the whole thing. Don't worry about the house. He's like, try a room for 100 days. And I'm like, well, heck, I can do anything for 100 days. So I rented out a room and I gave it 100 days. And I'm glad that I didn't buy the Victorian house, right? Because I found out very quickly I hated being a landlord, and I'm glad I didn't have to actually actually have to like somebody else manage the properties that the SheHive's always been in, and I love that. And so, so by releasing small pieces of your goal instead of insisting on the whole perfection, and just releasing small pieces of the experiment, it actually really allows you to learn and then adjust. And adjust easier. Like, it's easier to adjust, I don't want this one room, but I can pay for it for my 6-month lease, instead of being on the spot for $500,000 mortgage of a
Correct.
property, so.
No, yeah, and that's a good visual to have. And I could totally see you in the SheHive in this Victorian,
Yeah.
because I've been to both your spaces a couple
Yeah.
of times. So
Yeah.
I can see your vision, but good thing you had a mentor that told you,
Yes.
slow down. We start
Yep.
small and we'll see how
Yep.
it goes.
Yep.
And it's totally fine. And I have to remind myself of that, because I also always have a vision, but baby steps, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, and I do want to just, I apologize for interrupting. I think there's one really important distinction here. It wasn't slow down, it was go, because I was completely stopped because the goal and the vision was so big. I didn't know what to do. Like, it was
right.
overwhelming. Right. And so it wasn't slow down. It was take a small step. Like you said, baby steps.
Correct.
Yeah.
Start. Yeah. No,
Mhm.
that's a good visual, and it's a good that's good to know and to have, because we have to remind ourselves of that.
Mhm.
Not everybody starts at Apple.
Yeah.
We all start in our basements, or some of us
Yep.
are lucky enough to have a home office.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, let's get to the SheHive. That's how we met. That's how I know you. But I also understand you're an independent consultant.
Mhm.
So, and you have your coaching business that you're starting. So you're wearing a whole lot of entrepreneur hats.
Yes.
So, yeah, let's talk about the SheHive, just because that's where we met, and that's
Okay.
how I know you.
Mhm.
So you started with this one room, because I also know, like I mentioned now a couple of times already, which I thought was great. You bring other women in, and it's a community. It's not all about Ursula.
Oh,
It's
no.
about this community of women, and we all come
Mhm.
together. And if you need something, we're here.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really awesome business concept to have and to bring to fruition, and bring into this
Mhm.
world.
Well, it really started when I was in graduate school. I was very lucky that it was cohort-based learning, and my cohort was primarily women. I think, like, out of 40 of us, there was 5 men,
Mhm.
And graduate school was the very first time in my life that I ever allowed myself to learn for the sake of learning. I had always been in school competing against a syllabus or competing against a grading system. And it was something about the women that I was in school with. I remember one, I was complaining to her the amount of books that we had to read, at a particular time. And she's like, just look at it this way. When are you ever going to have an opportunity like this in your life where your only expectation is to learn? And it really flipped a switch in me. And she was challenging out of love, not being mean.
Mhm.
She was just helping me reframe, and I absolutely loved it. And it was so much fun to just learn, and not worry about the grade. The grade takes care of itself if you're learning, right?
Right.
And it was such these women, because we were in graduate school and it was a program. I studied positive organizational development and change. And so when you're
You
studying
have
something
the
like that,
most
people
interesting degree, Ursula. Okay.
well, thank you. I'm an MPOD is what it's called. So it's actually a master's of science, but it's a mixture of positive psychology and organizational psychology.
Okay.
And just having, these women, or the whole cohort, but particularly women, just really open up and share of themselves and bring in distinct, different points of views. If you open up a space for other people to bring their stuff into. And when grad school was over, I'm like, I don't want to stop this. I didn't have any other learning community where I was surrounded by brave and, wise women. And if somebody else had it at the time, I would have just joined it, but I couldn't find it, so I created it, right?
Right.
And so that's what I do at the SheHive is I invite, like I say, we are a group of friends that have very diverse talents, diverse interests, diverse knowledge, and we just learn from each other. And even when I am coaching or mentoring or teaching or facilitating, I am learning from the people that I am in there with as well too. And so we focus on all different facets of wellness. And I say we because there's a board that actually facilitates or coaches or mentors alongside me. And some are focused on, spirituality. Some are focused, like I am, on career development or entrepreneurship. There's others that are focused on physical wellness. So we're really looking at all the different facets of wellness. And so it's kind of a one-stop shop for, your whole package of wellness for women. And it really varies what we're teaching from time to time, dependent on who's got an idea of something that they really want to immerse themselves in and learn with other people. And so it changes from time to time. Like I said, we have really whittled down our offerings. We used to do about 50 a month, and now we're down to about 2-3 a week. And so, like I said, I found myself really concentrating on entrepreneurship. One, because I'm passionate about it. Two, because it's the niche that presented itself.
So, and if I may ask, so
Mhm.
how do you make money? Is it also you mentioned you don't like being a landlord earlier, so you were also co-working space basically?
Yeah, the co-working space just paid for the space. Rent has always been the most expensive part of the SheHive overhead. So how it makes money, it used to in the past make money, very little money, by people paying per class, right, or paying per event, and what I've recently done is switch to a membership model, and not having a space anymore, my budget went down 90%, and so it has never been a huge money maker. This is one of those that, I mean, it's always paid its own bills, right? And it paid me back all my startup costs. It gives me fund money. I can't live off of it, which is why I continue to consult and do work other places. I probably could if I really invested a ton of time into it, but I have so much fun with it the way it is now. I don't want to work too hard to ruin it. So, and I enjoy the work that I do in corporate America too, and it pays for this work. Um, so that's how it makes money, is people pay a membership fee to be part of this. And the board, like I said, I do some of the events, other board members do some of the other events. All of us put all of the money back into the SheHive kitty, all of the membership fees. So it pays for our overhead, and then the board decides at the end of the year what we do with any profits. So is it, we pay each other out? Do we, invest in a local nonprofit? Whatever.
So, and you mentioned you worked in the nonprofit world for 20 years, and then you quit your job and you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Why entrepreneurship? Why not, be out there in the nonprofit world helping other people?
Well, it's funny. So, I worked for the largest nonprofit in Detroit for 16 of those 20 years. And so I got to know a lot of people in the nonprofit arena. And so probably about 3 years before I even left my nonprofit job, I had actually started doing consulting, because when you have that many people that come and go through your doors, like I had worked with thousands of people over the 16 years I had been there. And so they would hire me, just to do side projects for them. So I had started a side consulting business just a little bit. The reason that I went into entrepreneurship, like I said, is because I just had this strong vision in my head of what a learning community for women could look like, and it didn't exist yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a, so I think I know, and the theory of change I subscribe to is that the most powerful indicator of long-term sustainable change is that you have a very clear ideal state in your head. And the SheHive was so clear to me. I had it drawn out on a whole book. I knew exactly what it looked like. I knew what was going to happen there. I mean, I was set on what it was going to be. And it was so exciting to me that I decided, because I had never wanted to be an entrepreneur. It just is not in my DNA. It's not part of what my family does. I was never, my father worked for the government. My mother worked for the government, like we don't do those kinds of things. But the vision was so strong and powerful and exciting to me that I just did it. And And the coolest thing is once I had, like I said, I had this notebook where I drew room for room, what was going to happen at the SheHive in every single room. Like, here's where we're going to have classes. Here's where we're going to do co-working, here's where there's going to be therapy. Here's where there's going to be coaching, And I was so excited about it. I took it all over town and started meeting with people that I had met throughout my nonprofit career and sharing with them what I was going to do. And that led to, somebody giving us our first space to try for completely for free. Right. And then it led somebody else to introduce me to somebody else who partnered with me to start the place. And and when you're just really excited about your vision and your passion and you can share that with other people, they start buying into it and they start providing the support that you need to make it happen.
So you had this book, and we know you didn't get the Victorian house, but still, other than that, was it pretty much what you had envisioned?
Yeah. I mean, it was a 3-story Victorian house that I had totally envisioned, right? And we ended up renting it was actually a 3-room suite that had like 80s popcorn ceiling and 80s carpet. And probably the carpet had been laid in the 80s, and it was like so not nice. Like there was vines growing through the wall,
Wow.
like it was awful. And we had we had a coked up landlord who we found naked once in the back of this place. I mean, it was bad, but we spent, and I had a business partner, Andrea, when I first started the SheHive. Andrea and I just had this very strong vision in our head. And whereas I had a real clear idea of what I wanted, like the design and the curriculum and all of that to look like, she brought this very fanciful, like, this is how I want the space to feel. And she made it like the inside of a Pinterest board, even though it was so completely gross in there when we first got the space, right? And, I bought her out a couple months into it because she quickly realized entrepreneurship, or at least this type, was not for her, right? And, but she helped create it, and it just carried that space wherever we went, because we expanded quite a bit from that first original space. And like I said, I'm glad of where it actually ended up going. I have to tell you, I'm thrilled that it's online now. My life has gotten infinitely easier now that it's virtual. And if I do miss being with people. Yeah.
I can just imagine, you cut off a little bit. I don't know if it's my internet, but I can imagine that obviously virtual is a little, because if you have an office or a space, it needs to be maintained. I used to have an office for my business as well, and working from home is so much easier.
Yeah.
But speaking of partners, since you had a partner in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
I can envision that being pretty hard.
Yeah.
And you said you bought her out after a couple of months, but especially with a passion project like yours.
Yeah.
But she decided like it wasn't for her.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, there was more to it than just that, right? And to the point where I swore I would never have another business partner after buying her out. And looking back now, I can see, I mean, that was many years ago. I can see my part in it, her part in it. Like there's always two, I would have handled it completely different now because I'm smarter, right? But I was still scared and I couldn't start a place by myself, and I needed somebody to hold my hand, and she was the right person. She believed in the project and she helped it get going. And I firmly believe when you have that very clear vision, that very clear goal in your mind, the right people, because you can't do anything without a support system.
Right.
I mean, that's just, change doesn't happen without a support system. And so I believe the right support system shows up when you need it, right? As you start sharing that vision and start sharing those goals. She was part of the support system that got it up and running off the ground. I have never, until recently, had a business partner again. Now I've had board members and people in the board. At one point in time, we called them partners, but I have always solely owned the SheHive since the day I bought out my original business partner. Doesn't mean though, because I'm always of the point of view that I don't know everything and I need other people's points of view in there, right? So, which is why I always had to have a board, because, if it's just me, it's not the Ursula show, it's a community of women learning from each other. So we have to have a partner. Actually starting the coaching school last year was the first time I took on a legal partner again, and actually took on 2 of them. It was much different this time. I think one of the things that I've come to learn is that, it's hard. It's a hard balance and a fine line between friendship and partnership when it comes to business. you have to be very distinct about, are you my friend or are you my business partner? What hat am I wearing? Like where do we fall? But I think more than anything, what it is these three partners in the coaching school came together on completely equal footing. And whereas when I started the SheHive had been my idea, had been my vision. And then Andrea came in, after the fact and joined me. So it was never an equal partnership. And so, even though like monetarily it was equal, it wasn't, it just wasn't, because it was my idea. And so I would have set it up a little bit differently. So it was more because it's an equal partnership, because of course, when there's one person that's got this really strong idea in their head and they're just going, right, it's hard for the other partner, right?
Exactly, I can imagine.
Yeah. And so, like I said, that's why it just didn't work out. I know better now. I think partnerships can work. You just have to be, you have to talk a lot, right? And you have to be very straightforward with very specific expectations of each other.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That's interesting. So
Yeah.
with your new partners now in your new business, did you guys like put contracts in place right away, or?
No. The funny thing is, Andrea, who was the original SheHive business partner, her and I had a contract. We actually sat down with a lawyer and he rehearsed the whole tragedy for us, right? So we had everything in a contract of, who can make what decision and how much money and all of that kind of stuff. And it did us no good. Anyways, with this group of people that I'm working with, we just very early on were very clear about what everybody's role was in the business, right? And so, having very distinct roles and where it is that you contribute and where you're the expert, or are considered the expert, is so I know what my lane is, right? And they're very appreciative of the work I bring in there, just as I know what their lane is. I'm very appreciative of the work that they do there. Doesn't mean that we all don't contribute. All three of us meet every week to plan out everything, But I also know that I am, one of my partners is an ICF master certified coach, which is the very highest level. So I really rely on her to know the bomb about coaching, right? Like even though I've been doing it for years, she has a level of expertise that I don't, right? So I really rely on her for that. And so even though we work together, at the end of the day, I trust her expertise, right? And so if we disagree, I'm like, well, she's got the expertise. I'm going to listen to her. Whereas, some of the work that I do more on the creative side of that business in particular. And so she's just like, here's all the content, make it beautiful, so, and just totally trust me on that and is appreciative. Our third partner is really all about the experience and making sure that our customers just feel cared for, right, and supported and get what they need. And nobody's better at it than she is. And so when she says something about, I think people need this, we listen. And so I think that that's just really understanding where everybody's strengths are and how bringing all of those strengths together makes a whole, right? It is so much, it just has worked out so much better. And again, like I said, we started out with a very mutual respect of each other and very equal footing. And so there's actually no actual legal contracts on that, and
Just all have your
I imagine, yeah.
That's good.
I imagine someday there'll have to be something a little bit more legal than we have now, but not yet.
So the way I understand it, so you're an independent contractor for is your mortgage, if you have one, throwing it out there.
Yeah.
And you have the SheHive that went virtual, and that was one of my big questions, if it was painful to shut it down not shut it down, but go virtual. But you're saying it feels good.
Well, that's not to say that I didn't cry for 2 years, so, because I think as all of us did during the pandemic, I learned a lot more about myself, or I changed a lot during the pandemic. I've always been an extreme extrovert. I get so much energy about being around people. And so that what I loved about the SheHive was that, we had 3 different learning spaces, and I loved it when they were all full of people, right? And
It was buzzing.
it was just buzzing, this energy going on.
Right.
And, as the pandemic, started and then went on, suddenly it was just like, instead of, 50 people in there on a night, there would never be more than 3 of us, right? Because there was 3 of us that worked together out of there. And it started to get a little bit depressing. But what I did discover is the more I worked from home, and I'm still with people like this right here all day long, right? My job is to talk to people, and I still talk to them all day, just not face to face. But what I found out is when I was doing it this way, it afforded me a lot more free time. And so I used to put on, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably about 100 miles a day going between, consulting and coaching and the SheHive and, all that other stuff. And right now I've only driven my car once in the past week, and I love that, So there's so much more time to actually pursue things that are of interest to me. And I think that's really important for entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting out your entire life is your business.
Yes.
Right. And I'm to the point now where the business is manageable. All of them are very manageable. And then I still have time for, hobbies
Right.
and reading and exercising. So I will tell you this year, all of my goals for the most part revolve around those things. Like my big goals, it's all about, what it is I want to be health wise, what it is, it's all tied to my core values, which are comfort, connection, and curiosity. What am I doing to indulge those things? And that's really what all of my goals this year are.
Comfort, connection, and
curiosity.
I love it.
And actually, I don't know if I can turn it enough that you can see it, but they're on a poster. I keep them right there on the wall.
Okay, I love it.
In case I ever forget, I don't, but
Right.
as a reminder, this is what life is about. I think that's really important for our goals, is that goals have a much better, I believe, a much better tendency to come to fruition if they are tied to a core value.
Right. No, that absolutely makes sense. And I think, unfortunately, it seems to be something you learn with age.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wish I knew these core values, that I even had any when I was younger, and could have molded my life according to that.
Yes. Yeah.
Instead of just hustling and making sure my baby is fed,
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
well, yeah, there's just different stages of our life where, in some ways it's a privilege to be able to live by value and not by just need, right? And so, when we were younger, we probably weren't in a space of privilege where we could actually make those kind of decisions. Now I can decide what kind of work I do. When I was in my 20s, I just had to pay the rent, and there's other people that, that's the reality for all of life, right? And so being able to tie stuff like work to value, like I said, total privilege. And it, comes with, time and space and knowledge. Plus, what I would have valued when I was 20 looks nothing like what I value at 50.
You're right about that. Yeah. It's different now.
Yeah. I didn't know myself well enough to set those values back then.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the SheHive, how did you find your people, your women to join? Like, was it a lot of social media or just word of mouth? Because you said you had a lot of connections.
Yeah.
We talked about this before we started recording. I said that your website is pretty awesome, and your biography, and you mentioned you just had a lot of connections and you got to learn from your previous jobs, which is, so valuable.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing I'll tell you, if you ever want to become a well-rounded individual, go work in a nonprofit, and like I said, I worked for the biggest one, and still you wear multiple hats. There's never enough money in a nonprofit world, right? Mm-hmm. And so even though my background initially, before I went to grad school, was HR, I actually started at the nonprofit in the digital space. And because I knew how to do HTML, and it was so newfangled at the time, right? And so I spent a lot of time in digital marketing, eventually became the marketing director, and stayed in that space for a long time. So I was very lucky. I got a lot of training, I was trained by the people that did Barack Obama's initial online campaign. So I got all of this really great knowledge, and,
right.
And that was a big deal back then. And so it really helped me. I will say though, towards the end of my nonprofit career, I went back to my HR roots and went back into employee engagement, because that's what I really actually truly loved. But by the time I had started my business, I had a ton of experience in marketing and communications. And so that was really helpful. Mm-hmm. But again, I will tell you, the way that I found my people initially is I partnered with somebody who knew everybody under the sun. She had a big girl group,
Okay.
a girl gang, I guess. And so she invited them in and they told their friends. And, I told my friends. The other thing that happened is somebody knew somebody who introduced us to a business coach. And the business coach came in and she had somebody else that she was coaching that was just starting a PR firm. So she hooked the two of us together. And this was somebody that is really well respected, had been in corporate PR for years, knew everybody, was just starting her new firm. We were her first clients. And so she gave us work at $100 an hour. And now, I mean, you can't even get a hello from her for $100, like she's like big time again, right? But it was all about the connection, just getting connected to people. So, Jennifer did, all this PR for us, got Andrea on TV, we had newspaper articles, so stuff like that. It just really, and Andrea and I were on a couple like local news shows together. And then she did one Sunday morning one all by herself. And, we were in magazines but most of it really is word of mouth.
Okay.
People tell people. I know. How'd you come to the SheHive?
I'm trying to think. I don't know, but to be honest, I feel like Detroit entrepreneurship, it's such a small circle. Like especially back then when I was starting out, my business has changed since back then, but it was built. First in Woodward, then in Corktown.
Yeah.
I don't know where they are. They're still in Corktown, right?
Yeah, they're in Corktown. Yeah.
Tech Town.
Yep.
So those were like my back and forth. So I don't know, maybe that's how I heard about you somehow. Because I was looking specifically for an entrepreneurship circle to exchange with other entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It was you.
Yeah.
You had that
group. So and that's part of the whole networking thing is, like I said, I had never wanted to be an entrepreneur. So when I had this idea that I was going to build this business, I went to the Build Institute myself first, because they're known as the group that can actually help you launch a business.
Right.
And so I went through the Build program initially, and then I ended up teaching for the Build program for a couple of years as well too. And so that's also another place where a lot of the networking happens are, my cohort from the Build Institute. So for those that aren't familiar, it's an entrepreneurship program in Detroit, and then actually facilitating their classes for them after I graduated from them. And actually, they were one of my clients early on in some other consulting work I did. Actually introduced me to a whole new budding group of entrepreneurs that got me connected with another group, Accelerate America, that got me connected with, and so it's all about the networking. I mean, we do, people find us now a lot. And like I said, I haven't paid for advertising. Very rarely ever have I paid for advertising. We're not big enough that we need, like, I'm not filling an auditorium, the type of work that we're doing. It's small group. It's like small group mentoring and small group coaching. And so if you have more than like 12 people in the room or in the group, then it's not manageable. But still, when we were doing 50, 60 events a month, that was a couple hundred people we needed every month. But it was mostly Facebook at the time, because that's where I know my audience, because very early on, we did a lot of research on our consumers and, what their age range was and, all their demographics. And Facebook is where they hang out. And so we did a lot. Yeah, we did a lot before they were getting stricter and stricter on, they, were wanting you to pay to actually share your events. But still to this day, that's where we do most of our quote unquote marketing. And beyond that, it's just really word of mouth.
That's where I messed up. But I'm such an introvert, really. That's really why I started my podcast, because I'm so timid, and I never network. I don't. I just, I go to these events and then I go home.
Yeah.
That doesn't really get you that far.
No, I'm going to tell you, I am not. It's kind of funny. I love being with groups of women or just people in general. I'm not a big networker myself in certain circles, because I don't like there's a couple of really good networking groups in in Metro Detroit. So like Inforum, and I'm not even sure.
I just joined them last week.
Okay. And so it's really good, but I can't bring you business, for the most part, Or the Detroit Economic Club was another one that I had attended in the past. And like people would sit down next to me and they'd be like, so what do you do? And I'm like, I own like a micro business. And they're like, bye. They just walk away because they knew that they weren't going to get anything from me. Right.
Right.
And that's why I tend to find with a lot of those types of networking, not that they don't have their place. And I think they're great. I think Informed does really important work. It's just not my jam because I'm not looking to I'm not looking to sell anything to anybody. I'm not looking, to buy anything from anybody, more importantly. And I can't help you with your corporate career in the way of like, I can't get you another job. I can't put in word of mouth for the most part. I could coach the hell out of you to help you understand what you want it to be, but
Right.
But in those instances, what I am bringing to the table doesn't fit with those groups for the most part. And so I tend to have my networking, I created the SheHive as a way for us to network with each other where it was more on a like friend networking, I guess, like how do we meet each other just to be interested in each other as people.
Yeah, but it makes total sense. And that's why, I kind of did this podcast because, you're not going to bring me trade, imports to, comply over, like make sure it's compliant with US Customs. But I like the exchange of like-minded women.
Yeah.
That's as simple as it is, basically. And that exchange is important as well to get us where we want to go.
Yeah.
I can still go to the boring networking events by myself, and that's just something you have to learn. I joined the Chamber of Commerce when I first started. Was it what you mentioned? But I don't have to hang out with a whole bunch of realtors, it just doesn't get me nowhere, it's my morning, and you just have to figure those things out.
Yeah. I joined the Ferndale Chamber of Commerce early on too, and they're lovely people. They really are. It's just, I am not the type, like I'm not their target market, and same thing. I joined the Mayor's Business Council. She had asked me in Ferndale to join her. She's like, we need a micro business, we need that point of view in here. So I joined that. But again, it was just a little bit different. Like these micro businesses or solopreneurship type things don't seem to fit in as well to some of those. So I like that you've actually created your own network.
Yeah.
I think that is the most important thing. I mean, not just think, it is when you really, again, the theory of change that I subscribe to, right, says that, you have to know where you're going before you even decide how you're going to get there. And you have to have a support system that gets you going there.
Exactly. You absolutely do. Because like I always say, or I said in my first episodes, your friends are not always the ones. They don't even understand what you're doing.
Exactly. Right. I always laugh. My best friend works at a junkyard. I'm like, it's a very fancy, like parts place or whatever down in Texas. And she's like the regional manager for all of their HR and everything. But I always tell people, like, my best friend works at a junkyard. She's not really helping me out in that aspect, career wise.
Right. And that's okay.
So
because we're friends,
Yeah, it is. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So what are some wise words you have for us entrepreneurs that are trying to get to, a more established place like yourself? Like what are your recommendations, like tips?
Yeah. So I'd say dream, like spend some time dreaming of what it might look like, right? And there's a ton of different tools that can help you do that. Like there's exercises like, what does my ideal day look like? What is my vision board? All of those kinds of different things. But I think that that's the first one, is just freeing your mind and allowing it to dream what might be, right? And then from there, where am I today? Like taking a real accurate assessment of where you are today, and then defining what the difference between the two is. So then you create a learning plan to go from here to there. But the most important thing out of all of that is realizing once you create a plan to go from here, where you are today, to this ideal day, it's going to change. Right. And you can't get too tied to what the outcome is really going to be, because you're going to learn something about yourself or about the way that the world works that hopefully is going to change where you're going. And I coach, it's the process that I follow all the time when I coach women, either on, the business they want to start or the career they want to have or the life or their vision for their life. And they're always afraid to like define ideally what they want One, to say it out loud is kind of scary. Some people literally can't figure it out, but most people I think can figure it out with the right exercises and prompts. They're afraid to say it out loud because they're like, what if I don't achieve it?
Right.
And I'm like, what if you start going towards it and find something completely different and beautiful and magical, and so I just really think that allowing yourself the freedom to dream actually just starts you out in the path to discovery. Right. So I really think that that's it. And I think I firmly believe, and that's why I've invested, my time and talent into the coaching school, is that coaches can actually really help you get there. Right. They can answer the questions that help unlock those, those dreams and ideas if you don't know how to do it yourself.
No, it makes total sense.
So get you a coach.
Right. Hey, but you see, I'm not afraid anymore. I'm yelling it from the rooftop.
Yeah. I meant the proverbial you, not just you. Get yourself a coach.
You're right. Because I was just about to say, that's been my journey. I had to allow myself to even really want it. Say it's okay, that's my dream. Because like you, I don't come from that type of background. My dad was in the military for 20 years, and then he worked for a defensive contractor for 20 years.
Yeah.
My mom's at the same gas station for 40 years.
Yeah. Yep.
And here's Michelle like, oh, I got all these goals and aspirations.
Yeah.
And my mom's like, who are you?
They did something right.
And she, in a positive way, but still she's like, I don't know where you get it from. She says, you don't get it from me.
That's not true. We got it from them somehow, good or bad.
Right. We're a mix of everything. So what you said is I agree with you. You have to allow yourself to dream.
Yeah.
And take a look. And coaches are out there. We touched on it briefly. They get such a bad rep because there's so many these days.
Yeah.
Some of them are really great.
Yeah. Some are really great. And so you and I talked about this before we even started the podcast. And so here's my humble opinion on coaching, right? There is no licensing requirement or certification requirement around coaching right now. And there's a big push in the industry to change that. And I do hope that works. So anybody can call themselves a coach. I mean, you don't even have to have a certification. Anybody can call themselves a coach. And even if you did want to be certified, you could buy one for $9 online, If people are trying to tell you what to do, that is not coaching. That can be mentoring, that can be consulting, that is not coaching. So if people come to you and say, I'm a life coach and I'm going to tell you how to live your best life, that is not actual coaching. What coaches do is they are actually trained in a way of actually interviewing and questioning and tool sets that can help draw out what you already know to be true about yourself. You just haven't been able to verbalize yet. And or maybe it's not, you don't even realize it's true yet, right? But they can help draw those things out of you. Coaches don't tell you what to do. They listen to you. They ask questions and they listen to you. And they help you verbalize, desires and wishes and commitments and hold you accountable to the commitments that you make. And that is much different from, I don't know, so-and-so life coach who's like, you got to do this, 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 and this, So that's why it gets a really bad rap. And so there is actually an art, but there is most definitely a science to coaching that most people that call themselves coaches don't know anything about.
Yeah.
So get yourself a certified coach and do your work. I will tell you, out of everybody I've ever coached, I've only ever had 2 ask me to see my certification or even ask me what my certification was. And so pay attention to it. It matters. And so.
Because I would probably be like in the business for a business coach down the line. Somebody who knows more than me, obviously. But I listen to a lot of podcasts. And to me, it's scary because I catch on to things, okay?
Yeah.
And to me, they all want to do group coaching. They all want to drop like a new module once a week. They all want at least $3,000.
Yeah.
So I'm just afraid to even.
There's an entire economy around helping coaches make money. And I will tell you, it's so funny. When we started the coaching school, we wanted to see what other places were doing. Well, the minute you Google coaching school, the stuff you get, like all of my ads, like buy my coaching program, I'm going to sell you marketing on how to market yourself as a coach. Every day that I go on Facebook, and I'm on there every day because of my business, every day I go on there, there's somebody promising me that they're going to get me, $1 million in leads, and I don't even have to work,
Right.
so there's an entire, and I have a theory, I don't know it to be true in my head, that most of that is predicated upon, it's predatory, it's men making money off of women's insecurities. And so the majority of those coaching programs are run by men for women to take. So it's just like the new LuLaRoe or whatever, and, so, I mean, and I think it's in our nature as women that we want to help each other, right? So,
Yes.
that's why we consider coaching. But yeah, so there's this whole thing, you've got to get yourself, passive income by creating a module or creating an online course that people will buy into. And for some people that works, don't get me wrong. Like, there's like legitimate people out there that do that, but most of it's just a scam. And so I get so mad and angry, but at the same time, those who know. And so I still come with him by continuing education. I have a master's degree in science to back it up. Like, I have done my due diligence and my work, and there are entities out there that actually look for that, and so those are my people.
Right.
So, yeah,
Absolutely makes sense. And like
yeah,
you said, we just have to do our research, because I
yeah,
many years ago I met the first life coach I ever met, and she was great. I mean, you could just you just get a vibe from certain people.
yeah,
She really helped people. But then I also met some where I'm like, oh, I wouldn't want to talk to you.
yeah,
Like, there's
yeah,
nothing, I don't know. But
yeah.
yeah, like I said, business coach down the line. But maybe you have some tips for me offline when we talk.
Sure, always. I always have tips as a mentor and as a fellow entrepreneur. I'm more than willing to share anything I have learned, the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, that's why I
And that's why I work a lot. Yeah. That's why I
Right.
work a lot with entrepreneurs, because I'm more than willing to share my own journey there as well too. So I do a lot of mentoring in that space.
But
Yeah.
that was basically, I think you answered all my questions I had for you, because you told us about what you're doing now. You told
Hmm.
us about your goals that you still have, and
Yeah.
you still have big ones. You're working
Yes.
towards them with your new partnership.
Yeah. Actually, Michelle, can I tell you one thing that reminds me, I wanted to say this, and I think it's really important, is that as you achieve your goals, I mean, it's always good, because if you really do set out with a strong vision and a support system, the ability to achieve, you can achieve so much more than you ever dreamed of. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. And it gets hard when you achieve things so quickly, is that then what? And so it's important to understand that this is a cycle, that you are constantly evaluating what the ideal vision looks like and where you are now, and what the support system is to help you move between the two. And so I'm in a space right now where I don't really know what the future looks like. And I'm actually consciously taking a step back and doing a lot of exploratory work
Mhm.
with my partners at the coaching school, because they're awesome coaches, to really define what my future looks like, right? So it's continual work. It's not a one and done, right? So goals is a constant reevaluation of, even though it was important to me last year or last month or last week, is it still important to me now because of what I've learned and who I am today? And so I just think it's a continual evaluation. And so, that's, I think, one of the very important things is to know that this is ongoing work forever. The minute you stop actually planning it, then you're kind of just like dead, you know?
Right. No, that makes sense, because I think, like you said earlier, I think the pandemic really made us think about things differently anyways,
Hmm. Yep.
certain things. And that's one of my whys to entrepreneurship anyways, because I'm also half German, so my mommy's overseas. And if
Yeah.
you're working a 9 to 5 and you have those 15 days, 15 days is not even that bad, but to me it's a joke.
Yes. Compared to the at least 6 weeks everybody else in the world gets off.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Yep.
So, and you're right, I was thinking about my goals a couple of days ago. I know where I want, I'm building my business. And sometimes I forget also how far I've come,
Oh yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a good friend of mine. She's a realtor herself, and she's pretty successful. And I said, oh, I didn't do nothing this week. And she's like, you just told me what you did. It sounded like you had a pretty good week.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? You're right.
It's amazing. We forget sometimes. If I know that we're going over an hour, but if I could share just a final story. So I had, it's easy, especially in the age of COVID when everything's kind of changing, right? Like, I once had this, 2,400 square foot space that had 50 to 60, events a month, and there was women coming in and out of it. And I had a board of directors of 20, and that is all considerably shrunk, And so it's easy to think like, I've never done anything, at this point in time, because, 2 nights a week I get online and I do a class on there, or I do some coaching on there. My best friend of 20 years passed away last year, and from cancer. And I will say, because I was starting up a business in the last years of her life, we had actually lost touch the last 2 years of her life. Luckily, we connected before she passed away. But she actually helped me start the SheHive, and she was very involved in it. And I didn't speak publicly about her death because it just wasn't, it wasn't about me. It was about her. And
Right.
I just, I had to process it for myself. But just recently I posted, because she pops up every day in my Facebook memories, because when you're with somebody for 20 years, she's there every day, right? And the Women's March, her and I had gone to DC. We had taken a bus with some other SheHivers to DC for the first Women's March. And that popped up in my Facebook. And so I posted something on Instagram about, I'm missing the hell out of her, and all of these women that I didn't even know were connected to her, that she had met through the SheHive, started commenting. I'm so glad I got a chance to meet her. In her last year of life, we worked out together every day. I did her finances for her. I helped her through all of her cancer treatment. And it just really gave me, I'm getting teary-eyed, it gave me such pause. Like, I created a whole community of support for her. And if you ever almost I'm like, shit, it wasn't for nothing,
Right.
This was a big deal, and so I think we never give ourselves, we never stop. I'm getting really teary-eyed. We never really stop and take a look at what it is we've accomplished. And it's so important, because if I would ever, do I want to still do this? Well, heck yeah, I do. Now, thinking about doing that for her, being able to create a community for her that supported her through the last years of her life. If I could do that a million times over, it's what I would do. So we have to go back and celebrate what it is we do, because it keeps us going.
True.
Yep.
You almost made me cry. I did see the post as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
But no, you absolutely created a beautiful community.
Well, thank you.
So, and I really appreciate you talking to me today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for listening to me for an hour.
Absolutely. And I will stop the recording for now.
Okay.